yet. As of last week, we had downloaded over 20,000 people in their. We have a section on the Project Smile that basically helps people create an education. You can download it for free, and we've had over 20,000 people do that now. We also have an education component of our website, and we've had over 7,000 people now download our educational systems, which is really exciting. Our goal is 1 million. And we're well on our way to reaching that. We've got a couple other really, really cool announcements. A couple months ago, I was approached by a man named Mark, who has started a cable television channel called Mark TV. And Mark had been after me for a while to create a channel for him, to create a program on his channel called Project Smile. And I was like, that's great, Mark, but what do I say? What do I do? He says, Joe, just be you. I'm like, no, that's great. Now what? And it literally just kind of took me a couple months to figure out truly what he was talking about. And then one day it kind of hit me. And what hit me was I can do a television program identical to this program, The Smile. And it's really, and I want to congratulate all of our people watching. It's because of our audience that we're starting to gain and gather more of a global attention. Our first live stream had 13,000 people on it. Our fourth one had over 47,000. And I have no idea how many people are on here today, Glenn. There might be 40, there might be 100,000. It doesn't really matter. But what matters is we're out there with the intention of creating a smile. And I've been asked and answered this question 1,000 times. They're like, Joe, what's it all about? I said, it's about creating a smile. And interesting, because Mr. Mark, he kind of got it right from the beginning. And it was in talking with him, I realized, oh yeah, we could do the same thing. The difference is with cable television around the globe, they currently are in over 350 million homes. So I want to congratulate all of our viewers, because the only reason Mr. Mark knew I existed was because he heard of this program. He heard of The Smile. And then he went to the website and he saw the response that people were giving us. So it's because of all of us, all of our viewers, and all of our online presence. And the one last thing I want to celebrate and congratulate, Averell and his team have created an amazing online presence. I tend to be the face of it and the voice of it, but it's him and his staff. I say I've got 2 Mateshes in my life. These men are brilliant. Mr. Matesh is on here now. I wish I could show his face. I just have to give a big applaud to these men, because I have to tell you, they make me look pretty good. Glenn, I'm in my 60s. They come in and out of pictures, and when I do an too long, they kind of cover over that with music. It's unbelievable how good I look, Glenn, because of them.
That's great.
Brilliant. These men are absolutely brilliant. And for any of you watching here, if you don't subscribe to our YouTube channel, it's real simple, mrjoe.world. Go to our YouTube channel. They just downloaded another video. We're almost to our 100th video now. Instagram, we're at 99. And because of these men, we've had over 20 million views on Instagram. And all of it happened because of an inspiration I had coming back from Africa. And here we are now, a couple, 2 or 3 months later, a lot more announcements to make at the end. But at this point, I want to introduce Glenn. I was actually introduced to Glenn, and for everybody here, Glenn and I have talked a couple times. I've not heard his story, though I was introduced to Glenn through our last guest, Bronson. And after I talked to Bronson, he says, I got this guy, Glenn, you got to get in touch with Joe. And I was like, great. So I put Glenn on the phone with one of our very first guests, Tom Flame, the gentleman doing water down in Dominican Republic, and they've had a nice connect. And Glenn, I want to welcome you to the Smile. So introduce yourself, tell everybody where you're from, and tell us your story, please. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yes, my name is Glenn Ambrose. I was born and raised in Massachusetts, and I'm actually in Maine right now at my parents' place. Although I live in the Dominican Republic, been living there for the last 5 years. So, yeah, I guess I'll just dive right into the story.
Please. Yeah, please do.
Um,
Please do.
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in Massachusetts, and I had a really good upbringing. Small town Massachusetts, lots of friends, and good family, and it was really nice. But I was always different. There was the ADHD had me bouncing off the walls in school, and I couldn't pay attention, and they didn't diagnose it back then and stuff. So I was mischievous, we'll say. Um, that weighed on me though, like as much fun as I had not fitting into what society wanted me to be, sitting still at school. And even my parents were very well adjusted people where I was kind of not. I was kind of the black sheep of the family. So I kind of could feel that growing up. And by the time I hit junior high, I was like, okay, I'm not going to be who they want me to be. I didn't know what that meant back then, which I think is kind of the full circle later on that we'll get to. But I just kind of was like, okay, I can't be who they're telling me I should be. So what if I just stop trying so hard? Because I was putting more pressure on myself than anybody else was. So I decided to just try doing whatever I wanted. And some kids were skipping school. So I was like, hey, can I go? Sure. So I skipped school and I got into trouble. And that's kind of how I was anyway. I was always grounded. I was always sent to the office. So my life didn't really change that much. I was like, I'm having fun and I'm still in the same amount of trouble I've always been in, except now I'm having fun. you know? So I had no fear of consequences, and that just kind of launched me out. I mean, really, it was like junior high where I just took off, just with that type of mindset. And obviously, there's a lack of self love that comes with that. So that turned into alcoholism. So for 20 years, I was an alcoholic. I couldn't get out of my own way, blamed life and everything and everyone else except for myself. And then eventually my son was born, and that hit me hard. That I was like, because my kind of default for my misbehaving, we'll say, or making bad decisions. If I couldn't rationalize it away, I'd just say, well, I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask to be here. And now all of a sudden I brought this child into the world that if I actually believe that, well, then he didn't ask to be here. And that was my choice. And I couldn't rationalize why him growing up without a father was going to be okay. So deep soul searching, struggles in and out, ended up finally getting sober through the 12 steps. And I had massive spiritual awakenings during that time. Over about a 3-month period, I just had a series of spiritual awakenings where I just blew open, and I just, I could feel God's presence. I could, there was the suffering got taken away, and it was amazing. I was just functioning at life, like, something that helped me at that time, I think, is I heard that a spiritual awakening was a change of perspective, a change of perception. And since I didn't really have a relationship with God, I was really grateful that that's all it was. Because I couldn't have figured out how I was going to have this spiritual awakening, right? But if you said, well, all it is a change of perspective, you just look at life different. And I was like, oh, well, I've experienced that. I look at life differently at 35 than I did at 12. So if it's just that, I might be able to handle that. So, but it opened me up. So I had all those spiritual awakenings. And that was it. That was 21 years ago. So my life turned around on a dime then. So I've been sober for over 21 years. and living as a spiritual foundation from that point forward. That's, one of my favorite stories with my son was, I was putting him to bed one night when he was young, and I said, "You're my number one priority, bud." And he goes, "No, I'm not." And I knew what he was talking about because I had talked to him about this, but I loved hearing it out of, a child's voice. And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he says, "Well," he says, "actually," he says, "your first priority is God. Then your second priority is you. You have to take care of you so you can take care of me. And then it's me. So technically I'm third." you know and it was so beautiful that he understood that at such a young age. He was probably like 8 or something, and I was just like, I says, you're right, but he didn't feel like he was in third place. You could tell in the joy he was explaining this. He was excited that I put my relationship with God first, and that I took care of myself second, because he understood that that's what gave me the capability to be a good father to him. And I think that that's still my priorities today. And every time I get a little off base, it's like, what are your priorities, Glenn? Are you walking through your everyday life like God is first, or are you not? And usually I find a little gaps in there that I can do better at. When God's first, everything else falls into place. So yeah, it's about 8 years in, I think I ended up starting my own business. It took me a little while to figure out what I wanted to do and how I was going to do it, and really learn to understand all the information that was coming through me, and studying and making sense of it all, this whole new way of life. It took me years. But then I developed my own way, working with other people in AA and sponsoring. It kind of laid the groundwork for me to become a life coach and a spiritual advisor. So I started my own business doing that. And that's what I've been doing for the last 12 years, really, is, helping other people with the things that I woke up to, with the information that was so freely shared to me, and that changed my life. I found that I had a way of expressing it that could help other people, And, when we were talking about this show, and you were talking how it's all about authenticity, and I'm like, that's my jam. That's how I've been able to do everything, because I understand that if I'm authentic, then the people that resonate with the way that I say things will find me. If I'm busy trying to be what I think other people want me to be, even if I succeed at that, it's not going to be me. I'm going to be their version of me. And then the people that would resonate with authentic Glenn wouldn't be able to find me because I'm not out there. And then the people who think they resonate with me at some point are going to find out that that's not really Glenn. So they're going to be a little let down. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to skip all that and just be authentic. And that's been a foundational piece of how I work and how I do my podcast and how I wrote my book and all that stuff. So yeah, authenticity, I think that's how we truly connect with people, our authenticity to their authenticity. And, that's where we really make the ground in our own self-work as well.
Ask you this question. There was a 2 or 3 week period before kind of the awakening, right? And then the awakening and then after, right? Describe to people, because there's going to be a lot of people on this call right now. They wake up and, I know literally there's people on this call that they wake up, they have to walk a mile to get water, so a lot of our audience is in the era of the part of the world where life's challenge is very different than you and me, I walk up and go 22 seconds to my water faucet. I literally could put 2 men on the phone right now that they have to walk every day for water. Their physical life is more challenging. So obviously today, 20 years later, your physical life's in a pretty good spot. I'm assuming in those darker days prior to the shift, your physical world wasn't as glorious and happy as it is now. Do you mind telling us a little bit about the challenges of your world, and then by the grace of God, we'll just say, and I know that experience being 32 years sober, by the grace of God, you have this awakening, right? And just because you had the awakening didn't mean it was really easy day 1, 2, 3, and 4 to, I'm going to live God first. No, of course not. It was a process. Help the viewers that are in that right now that say, I want what he's got now, but there was that era, the month before, the month after, right? That talk about a little bit about the difficulties of the month before, and then the challenges of literally figuring out this God first thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I'll preface it by saying that, now I've been living in the mountains of the Dominican Republic for the last 5 years. So, I have to go outside and flip a switch to fill the water from the tank over to the tub on top of my roof. And I'm living up in the mountains. So there's all my neighbors, that lifestyle you were talking about. I'm surrounded by aspects of it that, aren't easy on a daily basis, and quite honestly, I love it. And it's the people are just amazing and wonderful and loving and kind, and it also reminds me to keep my feet on the ground, and not to float off into, everything's so convenient, but. That being said, yeah, right before, that's it. I was a very low bottom drunk. So, I went from being a personal trainer to my body literally shutting down. I was dying. Like my organs were starting to shut down. I was homeless. Which I didn't know sleeping on somebody's couch was homeless until I got sober. I was like, oh yeah, I guess I didn't have a home. And I was always able to hold a job. I was always able to have a car. Not at the end, everything that I hadn't experienced yet, I experienced. Everything I rationalized, I just kept lowering my standards to meet my circumstances. Well, at least I'll always be able to have a job. Oh, now I can't even hold a job. I can't stay sober long enough to go to work. Like, oh, well, I'll always have a car. Nope. So it was all that. But, of course, the worst is the emotional bankruptcy. It's the hope. And I guess this is where I see the connection with all people, because it doesn't matter if you're an alcoholic, who, in a way we can say it's by our own choice, that we drank. So, that's one way of looking at it. So we could say maybe we brought on our own suffering, or somebody that's suffering from in the United States by living generationally in families that just lived off government assistance, or we're in another country where, the physical situations are much, much, much harder. No matter where you are, to me, it sparks with that little piece of hope. That little maybe, we have to find that, hey, maybe if the stars align, like I didn't believe I could get sober. I didn't get sober because I thought I could get sober. I got sober because I wanted to die really, really bad. And I just couldn't I couldn't do that because I didn't know if there was a God. I didn't know any of that. So I was like, if I'm actually going to end my life, I need to be sure that there's no other way. And AA got presented to me, and the 12 steps got presented to me. When I started doing that, I didn't actually think it was going to work. I just looked at other people and I said, well, I do think that they seem to have had the same problem that I had, and now they don't. So I guess maybe possibly it might work for some people. Whether it's going to work for me, I have no idea. And most likely, if I was a betting man, I would say no. But it might. So I didn't have a belief that things were going to get better. I didn't, I wasn't going there and going, oh, I'm going to go to AA and fix my life now. Absolutely not. I didn't have any faith that it was going to work. But I just said, I got to clear my conscience before I end my life. That there was no other way. There was nothing else I could do. I had to do that. So I tried, and I put the effort in. And then all of a sudden I was as surprised as everybody else, that it started working. I was like, what? So I think it's, that ounce of hope is, like I said, if you can just say to yourself, maybe, possibly someday, if the stars line up, everything works out perfectly, there's a slight chance, maybe, that things can get better. That's it. That's all you need. You don't have to talk yourself into this big, profound, oh, I'm definitely going to do it, and I know what it's going to look like and all that. You don't know what it's going to look like. There's no way. The how is God's job. So, we just have to just lean in and open ourselves up enough where maybe, possibly, and then put one foot in front of the other. Because I was suffering dramatically. I was suicidal. I wanted to end it all. And that's what I thought I was going to do. I just had to get AA out of the way to prove that it didn't work before I could go do that. And then in the promises, it says you will be amazed before you are halfway through, right? So I started having spiritual awakenings around, steps 1, 2, 3. Then all of a sudden I had a huge one after step 5, which is there's 12 steps. So before I was halfway through, I started blowing open and I'm like, oh my God, nobody was more shocked than I was, and I think, that's oftentimes I think we try to plan what we're going to do, and we want to know that it's going to work before we're willing to put in the effort. And that's just not how it works. We have to act ourselves into better thinking instead of thinking ourselves into better acting. Well, I'm not hearing you for some reason. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Absolutely amazing. I have to say to you, this is the first time I've heard your story. So I'm sure the audience is saying, Jesus, this guy's amazing. Joe, you did a great job. I'm here to tell everybody this is God completely. I didn't know any part of your story, none. And ours are very, very similar. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to ask one last question. I ask it to everybody towards the end. It's so how do you leave us today, Glenn? What nugget would you share with everybody on this call, and that they can take for the next 2 weeks and say, man, I heard this guy named Glenn say, do this. What would you want people to do? Well, how could you leave everybody today with whatever your pearl of wisdom might be?
Yeah, well, I'm going to share this just because it popped into my head when we were talking earlier. It's, because your audience is so global and there's so many different problems. To me, one of the biggest things is trying to understand, trying to connect with one another, regardless of the specifics of the story. That's most of what I do as a spiritual advisor and a life coach. People get caught up in the specifics of the story. They go, somebody says, oh, I was an alcoholic that was homeless. And they're like, well, I didn't experience any of that. I don't know what you're talking about. And it's not about whether I was an alcoholic that was homeless and somebody else has to walk for water or doesn't know where their next meal is going to come from. Those look completely different on the surface, but underneath what it is it's how, look for the similarities. If one person felt down and out, and somehow they were able to find God. Somehow they were able to find their way out. Somehow they were able to shift the sails and start interacting with life differently and create a different life that was better for them and their loved ones. Then do that. Don't get caught up comparing. Try to identify. I first learned that in recovery. Don't compare, identify. If you're going in there going, well, he totaled 5 cars, I only totaled 1. Well, you're never going to hear what you need to hear if you're busy comparing stories. Identify, understand that we are all the same. We all want to be loved. We all want good things for our loved ones. We all want to be content. We all want to be happy. And we all have the ability to access that. And it's just, I don't believe that we're all created. See, something that's innate within us, I think it's innate within us. I don't think God makes mistakes. So if there's a desire to be happy and peaceful and live a loving life, if that's within us all, then all of us have the ability to attain it. So it's just, attraction rather than promotion, connecting. And also, I saw a version of this with the Dalai Lama and Bishop Desmond Tutu talking about it, because they were both leaders of groups of people that had tremendous suffering. And they said that, when they were really hurting about what was happening with their people, what they would do is just picture themselves as part of. We're one human race. We're all the same. We're in this together and we can help each other and we all function the same. And it's getting rid of that terminal uniqueness, thinking that, my suffering is different. If you only knew what I was going through, suffering is suffering. And we all go through it and we can all help one another get out of that and live a more hopeful, happy future, So it's, just understanding that we're all human. We're more alike than we are different. And the specifics don't matter that much. There is hope for all of us, regardless of what your circumstances look like. Because, if I could do it, that was, I got sober in Florida and then moved up to Rhode Island to be with my son. And every year I would go back, and the thing that everybody said about me was every time they saw me, they'd shake their head and they'd be like, I can't believe you got it. Out of everybody, I can't believe you got it, because I was such an angry little mess when I walked in there. So, and growing up in this little town, Massachusetts, like, there's nothing special about me, people. There's nothing special about me. And I've lived an amazing life for the last 21 years. So if I can do it, I know for a fact that anybody can.
Thank you so much. We will make sure that everybody in this audience has access to your podcast and has access to your book. It'll be on projectsmile.world for people to get to know you better and to connect with you and to connect with your message. So, sir, thank you. I really, really appreciate your time. And I'll definitely have you on as a guest on the channel. So, the rest of the globe can hear your story too. So, Glenn, thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes. Thank you. My pleasure.
Very good. So as we say goodbye to Glenn, everybody, God is just amazing. I have to say, that was the first time I'd heard Glenn's story. I could have shut my eyes and he was basically saying my story, telling my story, which is pretty amazing. So I have to say God is good, and how it all works is quite amazing. How, God puts different people in my life to truly share with you all. We've got some things to celebrate a little bit more. Brother Ben and his group they had actually 22 kids that got their report cards this past month or so because of the efforts of Project Smile. And you know what? It's just an amazing feeling to know we had a little bit to do with that. And that's just a great feeling to have. And I'm super excited for all of them. It was one of those things to where we talked about helping we talk about it all the time. We need to educate the next generation in a way that their parents were not educated, so that they can create a world that's different for themselves than the world that they grew up in. And like Glenn, his darkness was pretty intense. I know some of you right now watching this programming right now, you wake up and you say, my life is pretty intense, Joe. It's hard. It can be really challenging. And Glenn's message, unprompted by me, he said, we're all one. We all have the same God inside. And I'm telling everybody here, I'd never heard his story. I was just guided to put him on here by the God in me that is in him. And that's the powerful experience that we have here. I want to continue to celebrate our audience, our viewership, because as our viewership gets bigger and bigger, more and more people become aware of it. And my goal is to create an environment where the globe understands that the healing of our planet, the healing of humanity, happens through the good-hearted people of the world. We heal together. And a society where there are individuals that don't have water, that might have been okay in the last generation. It's not okay anymore. It's not. Why? Because we're the generation of change. Why? And the why is what I'm really figuring out more and more. Of course, there's more money than has ever been. And the technology today allows us to do things to fix challenges in the rest of the world, unlike we've ever had before. But the true difference right now, and why we are genuinely the generation of change, I'm learning it by watching two men. And I have to call them Brother Ben and Brother Alan because I can't pronounce their names. With all respect, I would not want to butcher Brother Ben's name, but it's a beautiful African man name. And this gentleman dedicates his life to 22 kids that don't have parents. He's married with his own child. And as I'm getting to know him more and more, I just hit me the other day. He's choosing to be there. Choosing. He and his family could move. He and his family could create a different life. He and his family could go and live an abundant life, much more so than he is because of the sacrifices he's making. And I say choosing, but in reality, he's guided. And he's guided by the same God in him that's guiding me to do this program called The Smile. The same God that's in Glenn. You just heard it. How can you not look at that man's face and hear his smile and see his eyes and not feel God? Yeah. Well, I can promise you, in the depths of his darkness 22 years ago, the last thing you saw was God and that guy. I know what it's like to be in the depths of difficulty and then come out the other side. Sounds like it happened for him in a very beautiful way. Well, Brother Ben is one of these people that is just truly guided, prolonged passion of the next generation. That's how and why we are the generation of change. There's always been money. There's always been technology. What's new now is that there are thousands, tens of thousands of people that over the past 5, 10, 15, 20 years have been guided by their God to support and to help update the conditions of people around the planet, literally. The other gentleman, his name is Brother Alan, Sir Alan. He literally introduced me to a little boy named Roger. And Roger, we'll have pictures on the website and stuff. Roger has all sorts of challenges. He really does. Little bitty thing, about 4 years old. He has some disease that is curable, but he doesn't have enough money. And whatever this disease is, it puts fluid in his head, his brain. The back of his head is like twice the size that it should be. And I saw his face, and he's just a precious child. But what happened was I see Brother Alan holding this boy. And Alan, he doesn't have to be there. He caregives 44 kids every day. He drove 3 hours on a mini bike, literally a small motorcycle, to give $50 to Roger's family worth of supplies and $50 to another family worth of supplies. All of that because of Project Smile. That $100 donation came from Project Smile. And when I realized what I saw, I could see his face. He's holding Roger in his arms. And then who's ever taking the camera picture, they show Roger, and then they show Brother Alan's face. And here's a man with a smile as big as you can imagine, his eyes full of love, who literally just drove 4 or 5 hours in African back streets, if they're even streets, to share his love with this child. That is why we're the generation of change. Prolonged passion. Avril, the gentleman who is the only reason all of this is here, is because of Avril and Mitesh and his team. Avril has a prolonged passion. He's in his mid-20s now. When he was in his mid-teens, he almost got kicked out of school in India because he was reading a book that didn't follow their criteria. No criticism to the school systems, but it drew a passion in him to do something different about education. Hence Project Smile.world. That was my original idea, but it's because of Avril and his prolonged passion. It is what it is now. And because of that prolonged passion, 20,000 people now have a higher guidance and a programming for a new career path, to learn a new career. 7,000 people for education. And that was before this last week. Our goal is 1 million downloads. How did all that happen? Prolonged passion from Avril around creating education. And I'll leave with this. Why this program is so important is because, just like Glenn said, he said, it doesn't matter your circumstance. We're all the same. We're all one. I did it in one of my last videos, over the past millennia, humanity has separated us based on religion. And I just don't like it. I don't like it because it's not true. It's not. I'm not saying that certain religions don't have certain styles. Great. But to say that one religion is grander than the other, falsehood. If the founders of those religions were sitting here in my house, they would not say, fight because I'm better. They just wouldn't. They would say love. And however you're guided, whatever your faith is, I honor it. But honestly, your faith is really about your eternal life. My conversation is about your today life, your tomorrow life. How do you know if you're living your highest sense of self? What did Glenn say? Glenn said, I'm becoming a better version of myself. How do you do it? Well, if you're on this call, what do I ask everybody to do? Go out and create a smile. Create a smile. And when you're creating a smile for somebody in your environment, you're living as the highest you of that moment. How do we know? Because the only way you can create a smile on somebody else's face is you're giving your love to that person. Because of this environment right here, because of our exposure, because of all of you, I have been invited to travel to Dubai. And on October 16th, I'm going to be doing a TEDx in Dubai. Now, I've been warned. They said, Joe, these are the most loving human beings on the planet. And oh yeah, by the way, they're all worth $100 million to 10 billion to 100 billion. And I've been asked, what are you going to tell an audience of billionaires? I'm going to tell them the same thing I tell everybody else. We're all one. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how many cars you have. I think it's fabulous. But just remember, how did you get all that wealth? Oh, that's right. God gave it to you. God gave it to you. What's my message? Why am I being asked to come there? It's because my message is about living a legacy. My message is about giving back. My message is about constant contact. Yes. And does constant contact negate itself based on having to walk to get water out of a dirty stream or having billions of dollars? No, it's the same God. We're living that God differently. We have the capacities to live differently, but only from the external position. From the internal spiritual sense of self, it's all still one. And it's because of all of you that I'm going to be able to share a message of giving back to the biggest hearted community on the planet. And these people actually have the resources that they're pursuing adventures where they can support. What's my message? My message is going to say, you know what, y'all? You're great, but you're not special. There's millions and millions of people around the planet that have millions and millions of dollars. You're all uniquely wonderful. But the generation of change isn't because of individualized wealth. The generation of change is because humanity is waking up to something different. We're waking up to a communion with a grander sense of self. And when you see the picture of Brother Alan holding Roger in his hands, and you see his eyes are sparkling and his smile is huge, that's a smile of God in his face. When I saw a picture of Brother Ben, he's carrying two 10-gallon jugs of water, one in each hand because he's big and strong. The strength he has climbing up the side of a freaking hill with little kids all carrying a gallon apiece. I look at the strength in this man. He could be anywhere he wants to be with his family. He's choosing to help these 22 kids that don't have a family. They're his family, and now they're my family. These aren't orphans anymore. They're my kids. They're Project Smiles kids. And I want all of you to feel that same way. If you're listening here today, know you're part of my family. I've got two boys, an 18 and a 14-year-old. They're watching. They're watching now. And people are watching you. Your kids are watching you. Your friends are watching you. The question is, what are they seeing? Are they seeing the highest version of you? Are they seeing a victim version of you? And I'm not talking about your circumstance. I hear if you're in oppression or if you're captured or you're being forced to do things against your will. Yes, that is a victim. You are physically being a victim. You're physically being victimized. I hear you. And for the rest of us, attitude, approach, finding that God, asking every day, dear God, give me the strength and courage. I told this, and I'll close with this. I was down in South Africa. I saw an entire community full of love, bright eyes, big smiles, super kind. And as I was sitting there, I was thinking, you know what? These people already have love. As I was out in the community and I came across the two boys that started this entire process, my friend Chris said to me, no, Joe, those boys don't have water at home. My head exploded. This entire thing of Project Smile was started here. My entire awakening happened because I'm listening to a random woman in September of 2022, almost 3 years ago. She doesn't even know me. I've never spoke to this woman. But because of this woman, all of this has happened. Why? Because I was watching. And people are watching you. And my question is, what are they seeing? Are they seeing the highest version of you? Are they seeing some other version of you? And how do you know if you're in your highest version? Look at the people around you. My goal is to create 1 billion smiles a month. How do I do it? We build this call. We build our social media. Join me on YouTube at mrjoe.world. Join me on all these different programmings. Join me on the different platforms. Get this message out. We're here at the same time on the 1st and 15th of every month, 10 o'clock Eastern. My guests next week are powerful people. 15th and the 1st. Super excited that on the 15th, I'm going to be doing a live event from Dubai, which is going to be fun. It'll be the first time I've done one of these events, not here in Atlanta. And as we continue to grow this call, as we continue to share our higher sense of self, as you continue to put smiles on the people around you, together, we're changing the world, one smile at a time. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I genuinely appreciate your support. Thank you.